regardless of how tech savvy you really are. The kids are always working to figure out, how do I get around this? And frankly, some of the native systems make it pretty easy.
Welcome to the Healthy Screen Habits podcast. I'm Hillary Wilkinson. Whether you're starting your parenting journey with a newborn or looking to connect with your teen on technology, let's learn some new healthy screen habits together. This season is all about healthy screen habits heroes. And when we think of heroes, they're often people who are helping others get out of trapped spaces. Maybe say they're, trapped in a burning building or being held captive. As parents today face the challenges of raising kids in a digital age, we often feel like we are trapped in this quagmire of technology that was never designed for kids. Devices come fully loaded, and we've got digital natives who view tech in the same light as a major utility, like water or electricity. It's something that they feel is needed to survive and thrive in today's landscape. So this is where our hero, my guest today, comes in, providing help in this area of sort of digital entrapment for parents. He's providing a pathway forward that is safe, balanced, and fun. He's created kid-friendly devices to span the early years of phone acquisition. As the co-founder and CEO of Troomi Wireless, a mobile phone platform designed to improve kids' mental health through a safe and balanced relationship with technology. And today we get to learn all about it. Welcome to Healthy Screen Habits, Bill Brady.
Thank you, Hillary. So fantastic to be with you today. I'm really excited.
Thank you. So, Bill, you definitely own this kind of area of the pond for as far as healthy screen habits goes with digital wellness and safe tech. What made you get interested in this area?
It goes back a lot of years, Hillary, even before I was married. And I've been married, just as background. I've been married for about 23 years and have 5 kids. So I'm in the thick of all of this with all of your listeners. We're all in this together. But even before I was married, as a student studying communication and marketing, somehow I got really keyed into the effect of technology on humans. And this is going back to the late 90s, before everyone had phones and certainly before social media. But I've always had this sensitivity about it. And when my wife and I got married, we decided up front that we'd be very intentional about the way we introduce technology in our family. And then obviously with the proliferation of smartphones and social media, the urgency around that as we had our 5 kids just increased exponentially. And about 5 years ago, I decided to make a career change. I'd been a marketing executive for a couple of decades and made a career change and said, I need to do something that's going to help society, that's going to be more fulfilling and make a difference. And that's when I switched my career.
And you strapped on the cape and started saving the rest of us. So thank you for that. So one of the most asked questions that we get, and it's understandable because I think people are looking for strict guidelines surrounding phone acquisition, and it's tricky. And one of the most asked questions is, what age should I get my kid a phone? And it's very tricky. Not all phones are created equal. And sincerely, what we do not recommend is handing a child a fully loaded smartphone right out the gate. So with all of that, do you have recommendations on an age or stage of acquisition for a first phone?
I think stage is the right way to look at it. Age is difficult because every family circumstance is different and every child's maturity level is different. I even thinking among my own kids,
Mhm.
and I hope they're not listening. But among my own kids, I have some who have been mature beyond their years and some not so much. And in making that decision, it's really looking at when are they ready to handle the responsibility, but even more specifically, when is there a specific need that needs to be met?
Mhm.
And I've got an 11-year-old son right now, for example, and this kid is responsible and very mature for his age, but his interests are not on screens. He wants to be out camping and hiking and building fires, and he collects knives and plays football, and he wants to be outside with his brother and his friends. He does not have a phone. He doesn't have one of my phones, because there's not a very specific need for him yet. And I think that's the measuring stick, is when is there a legitimate need, and when is the child ready to handle the responsibility that comes with meeting that need.
I like that. I like that kind of 1-2 approach. It considers both sides of it and doesn't just make it a given, which is hard because I think some people say, oh, you get a phone when you're
Right.
12 or when you're fill in the blank age. And I'm with you, not every kid hits the same developmental levels at the same ages. Do you see any trends as far as ages and stages with phone ownership and like what is happening now?
The age is definitely getting lower and lower.
Mm,
In large part, I think there are two driving factors. One is that most families don't have a home phone anymore. So if you've got kids that are going to be um, alone after school, or they're babysitting, they have to have a way to communicate. And if your kids are going to be babysitting for other people, they have to have a way to communicate. That's just a safety thing. And frankly, that's why my older kids, our first three are girls, and they did get phones around the age of 12 for that purpose. The other big driving factor is that schools are increasingly expecting that kids have devices to access digital learning platforms. So it's not unusual that kids will be asked, okay, take out your phones now and do
mhm.
XYZ. And that does get uncomfortable if you're the kid that says, I actually don't have a phone. And so and we see that age coming lower and lower. Statistically, there's a large portion of American kids that have phones by the age of 10 and 11, and certainly 12 is very normal.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with all of those numbers, and I think your assessment of most homes not having a landline anymore is completely accurate. I mean, we have one and literally the phone is in the closet and it we 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 had to turn off the ringer because the only time that we were getting phone calls was all from solicitors. So it's only there because we live in kind of a high fire area and cell phone towers burn down. So we have it for an emergency purpose, but I mean we are not the norm, I would say. We have to take a short break, but when we come back, I am going to ask Bill Brady all about his creation of a different, safer, balanced approach to cell phone ownership. We love what we do, and we wouldn't be able to do it without the generous donations provided by our listeners and followers. We want to extend special thanks to the Doctors Petty for their unwavering support of the podcast and organization. If you'd like to make a difference and contribute to the education and empowerment of families building their healthiest screen habits, please go to healthyscreenhabits.org, find the Take Action tab, and scroll down and click the donate button. 100% of your donation will be used to spread awareness and bring families the tools they need to develop healthy screen habits. I'm speaking with Bill Brady, a father of five and the founder and CEO of Troomi Wireless, a 2023 National Parenting Product Award winner. The Troomi mission is to provide kids with a safer smartphone. Well, first, congratulations on the win.
Thank
And
you.
how is Troomi different from other devices on the market?
Well, first off, there's a whole category that's been created over the last 5 years of safer devices for kids. When I got into this space, I mean, the option was iPhone or flip phone, and
Mhm.
flip phones were becoming increasingly hard to find. And on the spectrum and the landscape that's out there now, that's really what parents are choosing. It's, do I start my kid off with a fully loaded iPhone? Most people are realizing that's not a good idea. Or do I look at some of the safe devices on the market? Some of those safe devices are locked down so much to talk and text only, they're not really practical for kids as they grow. And that's where Trumi was born, was the recognition of, well, of course a phone for a kid should be safe, and protect them from pornography and predators and bullies. um, those are what I call the obvious concerns, but also protect them from the less obvious concerns: stress, anxiety, and depression, which we see come now from too much screen time and social media and influences like that. Our mission statement talks about, kids have this inherent ability and potential to learn and do and become anything. And we want to make sure that they've got the healthy relationship with technology that helps them get there. It doesn't create stumbling blocks, and it enables them where appropriate. And on a more personal level, the reason we do this is because of the ability to really help families. I got a letter not too long ago from a 14-year-old girl in New
Oh.
York City. She actually reached out with a letter and began, "Dear Mr. Brady, I have to tell you my story." And she described how she'd gotten into trouble with an iPhone,
Mm.
and her mother took it away. And she said, "For 2 months, I didn't have a phone and I thought I was going to die," she said. And she said, "After 2 months, my mom came to me and she said, 'It's time for a second chance. And here's a new phone. It's from Trumi.'" And she said that when her mom explained that it didn't have social media on it, again, I thought I
Thought
was
I
going
would
to die.
die.
But then she said, "The reason I'm writing you is to tell you thank you, thank you, thank you. I didn't know I could be this happy."
Oh my gosh.
And I just burst into tears.
Yeah.
And that's why we do what we do, because we know that all this stuff that we've inadvertently done to a generation of kids with smartphones, it doesn't have to be that way. And even the kids themselves, if given the chance, recognize that they're better off without social media and all the addictions of smartphones. So philosophically, where Trumi is different is, number one, it's safety and flexibility. So you have the constant protection from those concerns I just listed, but enough flexibility to give kids what they need for school apps, for the sports they play, for music if you let them listen to music, uh, to for their any church apps they need, things like that, where they can have the safe environment, but still have the tools they need to be productive, while still encouraging a screen life balance. We don't think kids should have phones as the default for how they spend their time.
Mhm.
So it's the tools they need without so much that they get sucked into this. My life is now virtual and on the screen, which is not healthy.
Right, right. And developmentally, I think it really speaks to the trickiness of kids navigating social media especially when they're trying to figure out, they're trying to create their own definitions of self. And
Yes.
so it's I think it's really important. You've taken
There,
all of these things into account.
there's so much going on there. And philosophically, I mean, that's another one I need to call out is there are some other approaches that, and they're for kids, but it's the attitude of let your kids do whatever they want to do. We'll tell you if there's a problem,
Mm-hmm.
through alerts and notifications. And philosophically, we would say, no, like, I don't want to know after the fact if a predator is talking to my kid. I don't want to know after the fact if my kid is looking at inappropriate images. I don't want those things to happen. So philosophically, it's
I love that kind of philosophy of preventative injury,
yes, yeah,
preventative efforts. Yes. So the other thing that I think was brilliant, at my house, my kids did have some of those bridging devices that you talk about that are recognizably not mainstream devices,
right.
which may be character builders, but and if your mom's the healthy screen habits lady, you have no choice. But the interesting thing you did with Troomi is that you paired with Samsung. And so these are Samsung devices. And maybe I've just answered my own question, but why did you make that move?
You definitely hit on one of them, and that's to reduce the resistance
Mhm.
of a child who's getting a safe device, but they don't want to be singled out.
Mhm.
And let's be honest, every kid, if they had their choice, would say, "I want an iPhone." That's just a fact. Globally, however, Samsung is actually the biggest selling phone brand,
Interesting.
and here in the States, it's number two behind iPhone. So it's no, we're not going to be on iPhone because we can't create the safe environment with iOS
Mhm.
because iOS isn't open to developers. So it has to be Android, and if it's going to be Android, then we use quality devices that kids are not embarrassed to use.
Yeah.
And they also, one of the big things for us too was camera quality. Kids have to have good cameras. It's one of the things that's really important to them. So in one of the Samsung devices that we put our operating system on has a 50 megapixel camera. It's massive, and that's something that kids love.
Well, and I think that the camera opportunities really promote ways of family time bonding. Like, I mean, taking pictures and putting together slideshows. And I mean, my daughter especially is continually showing me, like, oh, this picture would be better if you let the flowers come just to the forefront. I mean, all these tips that I'm like, oh, wow, you're right. So
I've got a daughter exactly the same. That's it sounds like they're cut from the same cloth.
yeah, yeah. And another thing that I really like and appreciate about the Trumi website is this list of kid smart apps that you include on it. And can you talk about those and how they get vetted and
Yeah.
what what it entails?
So there's no app store on the child's device. A child can't be out browsing apps and saying, "I want this, I want that." Rather, there's no app store on the phone itself, but inside what we call the parent portal, where parents manage their kids' Trumi devices, there's a section where you can activate what we call our collection of kids smart apps, and those are apps for school, spirituality, sports, healthy hobbies, music streaming services if you choose to do that, and it's all a choice. And those apps are requested by our community, and we keep track of the demand so we know which apps are most in demand. And then we take them through a vetting process where, number one, we're making sure that there's no inappropriate content. And you'd be surprised at how often seemingly innocuous apps are really dangerous on the back end. So we vet it for inappropriate content, and we vet it to make sure there are no backdoor channels for communication that you would not expect. I'll give you an example of that. My daughter, the photographer,
Yes.
she wants a graphic design app, and there's a fantastic app out there. It's a really fantastic app called Canva, and we looked at putting Canva, making it available, but there's no way to turn off the sharing and collaboration feature with other Canva creators. And that could become a way that a predator says, "Oh, I like that picture that you made. Why don't we talk about it?" And one thing leads to another, and all of a sudden there's something going on that you're not happy with, that's not safe. So we did not approve it. But those are the main things that we're looking for in that vetting process.
I think this is where you, as a father of 5 with kids whose ages kind of span this total group, you are uniquely qualified to have your finger on the pulse of what is wanted and meeting those needs right now.
We really look to our community as well, and keep track very closely of what apps are requested and how much. And we're adding more utilitarian apps too. Like we were bumping into kids needing, for example, apps that they use to do timekeeping at their part-time jobs. Or, we added Venmo, where, their that's something that kids use all the time. And so things like that, where you look at utilitarian things too.
But I think it's appropriate because it's kind of digital training wheels. I mean, as you step into the space of a fully loaded phone. So yeah. In every sort of parenting group that I've ever been involved with or anything like that, there's always some people who give me a response that I'm just wondering how, like, what would you respond to? Or they give me there's some people that provide feedback to what I do, and I'm wondering what your response would be. They say, "We're okay. We've got everything on lockdown. None of the scary stuff is going to hit my family. We're, they're parents that feel as though their own tech acumen is going to protect their children." And I'm kind of wondering, what would your response be to those sorts of families?
Wow. I hear people's stories every day. And I'll answer that question by sharing an experience that was really poignant for me. When I was getting the company started, I reached out to an old colleague to get his help with something. And on the phone call, it was clear that he was becoming very emotional. And I'll call him Joe. And I said, "Joe, what's going on? Tell me what's going on." And he was upset, and he said, "Where were you 3 years ago?" And I said, tell me what happened. And he said, because of, in his case, it was an iPhone, we went from having the sweetest family life you can imagine to a living hell in 6 months. And what had happened was his 12-year-old was badgering and badgering and badgering for a phone. They finally got him, they did find a flip phone. And then he badgered and badgered and badgered for an iPhone. And for his 13th birthday, they got him an iPhone. And my friend told me within 2 weeks, he was addicted to pornography. Within 2 months, he was sexting back and forth with girls at school, sending terrible pictures. Then he was contacted by a drug dealer on social media. Then he was using marijuana. And by the 6-month mark, he was dealing marijuana in the church parking lot during Sunday school. And that's when everything blew up and they got the full picture of what was going on. And of course, I empathized and was sensitive about it, but I knew him well enough that I was able to say, Joe, why on earth did you not have the parental controls on that iPhone turned on? And he said, Bill, I thought I did.
Mm,
And the unfortunate situation is that, number one, some of those controls out there are so difficult to keep up on that you think they're working, but they're not. There's also workarounds. I had a 17-year-old boy tell me that you can go into any high school and give the high school iPhone hacker your phone and $100. And at the end of the day, you can do whatever you want and your parents will have no clue.
for sure.
And that's the truth. So regardless of how tech savvy you really are, the kids are always working to figure out, how do I get around this? And frankly, some of the native systems make it pretty easy.
Yeah, yeah. That's a very compelling illustration and set of examples. And I too, I speak to parents who have suffered the ultimate loss, because of stuff that's been accessed on technology. I'm grateful that you are creating this, these platforms that parents hopefully can have a better sense of how to train their kids in this area.
Thank you.
So,
It couldn't be more important, and it's something that every family in the United States is, well, and frankly, not just the United States, every family with kids are dealing with these questions right now.
what's your primary driver for creating this sort of alternative tech for kids? Is it stories like this or?
It's the need, it's the recognition that we're in a mental health epidemic with our young people. Um, and it's become clear. In the beginning, it was, oh, is it correlation or causation? It's become very clear through the studies and the research that social media, for example, leads to deteriorated mental health for young people, especially girls. But the younger you start with excessive screen time and social media, the more drastic those effects are. I read research recently that said 60% of the young people dealing with depression in the United States right now are not receiving treatment because we can't keep up with the demand. It takes 4, 5, 6 months to get into a pediatric psychiatrist because the system is overwhelmed,
Yes.
because of all of the mental health issues stemming from technology. So if you're a parent, you have to give your kids a a a safer, regulated device to start out. It's the only way to do it and have any level of confidence that you're not inadvertently causing mental health problems.
Yes, I agree. And there's many factors that go into the mental health crisis. Of course, because I'm in digital wellness, I completely agree with you. The other thing that I cannot encourage people enough to do is remove devices from the bedrooms at night. The sleep crisis is,
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean that. So when you're saying digital, this is, you know, a major causal factor. I think it's kind of these ancillary areas that people don't realize are also contributing to it. But the sleep deprivation is huge.
Yeah, there's a book I would recommend to your listeners, by a doctor at San Diego State University, Dr. Jean Twenge. It's
Mm-hmm.
called iGen. I'm not
Yes.
sure if you've read that or talked to Dr. Twenge before, but her research shows very, very clearly the effect of technology on Gen Z, or iGeners as she calls them. And she, that sleep factor is one of the ones that she focuses on as one of the ancillary aspects of it. Fantastic book that every parent should read.
I agree. We have it in our Amazon marketplace, but I'll also list it in the links in our show notes. So we have to take a short break. But when we come back, I am going to ask Bill Brady for his healthy screen habit. Looking for a phone that provides entry-level protection and grows with your child as they age? Healthy Screen Habits has done the legwork for you. Troomi is the phone you're looking for. Featuring KidSmart OS, different isn't really the right word. Think revolutionary. Your kids can graduate seamlessly from one level of responsibility to the next based on their needs and maturity. Troomi, spelled Troomi, is leading the way on devices built for the growing needs of families. Get all of this and an added discount when you use the code HSHabits at checkout. I'm speaking with Bill Brady, founder and CEO of Troomi. On every episode of the Healthy Screen Habits podcast, I ask each guest for a healthy screen habit. So, Bill, this is a tip or takeaway that our listeners can put into practice in their own home. Do you have one?
I do. And I touched on a little bit of it earlier, but it's this notion of be absolutely intentional, both in the way you introduce technology to kids, specifically phones, and frankly, intentional in the way you model a healthy relationship with a phone. Make sure that that device is meeting a need, that it's a tool that does not become a tyrant. As families, I think there are things that we can do to help encourage that with our kids. Number one, it's only giving them age appropriate solutions, that we don't just say, here's a phone, now your whole life is going to happen virtually.
Right.
We can't do that. At the same time, as parents, we've got to be intentional about separating the phone from family time, separating the phone from the face-to-face interactions. And we've all done it, where we're on a device and a child is saying, Mom, Dad, let me tell you, hold on a second, just give me a second. And we look up from the phone and all of a sudden our child is gone. And what a tragedy. They've inadvertently felt like, wow, whatever mom or dad is doing is more important than I am. And they've inadvertently learned, I guess devices are more important than people.
Right.
And we didn't mean to set that example, but we did. So it's this idea of intentionalism in the way we introduce tech to our kids, and frankly, in the way we use it ourselves.
Even if we can train ourselves to narrate what we're doing, that's what if I'm not at a point where I can be interrupted, I will say, just a minute, I'm texting Nana about, Sunday's lunch and what, something like that. Just somehow that response is better than, wait a minute. It's like, it opens a window into what you're doing, so they can see that you're actually using it as a tool as well, and not blowing them off for, I don't know, one more scroll feed or something like that.
Not doom scrolling, as my wife calls it.
Yeah, exactly.
And in that moment, even better, to explain what you're doing, and even better, consciously turn your phone over and make eye contact and connect with them, even if it's for 10 seconds, and explain and just kind of set the expectation for continuing the conversation.
Thank you. I'm going to add that to my repertoire. Not just tell them what I'm doing, but I'm going to do that. Make sure that I've got eye contact. That's really important. Thank you. As always, you can find a complete transcript of this show and a link to any of the resources discussed by visiting the show notes for this episode. You can do this by going to healthyscreenhabits.org, click the podcast button, and scroll to find this episode. Now, if you are so compelled and convinced that Troomi is the way that your family needs to turn, which we hope, you can get $50 off the purchase of your new Troomi phone by going to Troomi and entering the affiliate code HSHabits. And Bill will hook you up. Thank you so much for all that you have done. I too feel like the friend of yours that was like, oh, where were you 3 years ago? Because we've kind of stumbled and fumbled along our path. My kids are a little bit older now, and we continue to stumble on our path, but I feel like you're offering such a great bridge. And thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you, Hillary. Wonderful to be with you.
For more information, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Healthy Screen Habits. Make sure to visit our website, healthyscreenhabits.org, where you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or via RSS, so you'll never miss an episode. It's free, it's fun, and you get a healthy new screen habit each week. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate you giving us a quick rating. It really does help other people find us and spread the word of healthy screen habits. Or if you'd simply like to tell a friend, we'd love that too. I so appreciate you spending your time with me this week, and I look forward to learning more healthy habits together.